So I just said, and I said, hey, Dave, let's get started. I just said, but you're confident, right? And we won't be able to regurgitate the same conversation, but I just picked that up because before that, what caused me to say you're confident is you were talking about maybe being undervalued or underestimated as a woman and walking into the room and maybe having to compensate for that or something where the room's not given. And I said, but you're confident. And you were then discussing.
And I said, now,
yeah.
it wasn't always that way. And it's taken, to get to midlife, to see what life, leave behind in nuggets. But, I used to walk into the room and be the quiet one, hoping not to get picked on. Not because I didn't think I had something to say, but, I didn't know anybody wanted to hear it or that I had something that would be of value. I look back on my career and I see that I've been in, PR, marketing, sales, business development, and strategy, executive level roles, but I always preferred being behind the scenes, right? I was always promoting a client or a personality or someone else's brands, writing their speeches, booking their appointments and, their panel discussions. And then all of a sudden I realized like, hey, you know what? Maybe it's time that I should be doing this for me, because I kind of knew that I should be doing that, but I wasn't listening. So I let that sort of just brew, and I started to just become, I guess, a little more comfortable with trying things out of my comfort zone, so that I could see like, hey, because I know I'm passionate. I know I care. I know as a marketing, you can, someone in marketing, you could see the forest through the trees, but was I going to be able to pull it off? Would I give myself permission to do that?
Do you think it was always inside of you? Do you remember being the young woman? Was it in there? Could you sense it?
Not in no, because, we didn't grow up like my children's, they're Gen Y, and we didn't have social media. We didn't publicly speak. So I don't really find myself as that, had that opportunity to even test it. And, in my 20s, I've always worked for, industries where it's predominantly men, whether it's manufacturing or commercial insurance or financial services on the leadership positions or at the top. So I really didn't feel that I could speak, right? Because there were big voices in the room. I thought it was mostly because of my age. I'm not, today I look back and I'm not so sure about that. But I did have the little nuggets. I worked for the CEO of the company who was amazing. And he said, you should really get more comfortable with being in front of this group. You have something to say. And use kindness and influence. And so he saw a leader in me, and all he had to do was say that once. So, and then, down the road, hearing that same thing. And people in the business may say like, hey, you should go try that. Should go advocate for women and then I just started testing myself to do the things that I was scared to do. I started calling this phase of my life the opposite of me. And if I was afraid to talk about AI and marketing or host a panel, I pushed myself to do it, but just giving myself permission to try those other things. And what I'm so happy to say is I said I can't for a lot of my life. And, just because you get to 50 or 51 or 48, it doesn't matter. You can still grow into who you are. There's still rebirth. There's still change. You don't have to feel, the same. I don't feel the same as when I'm in my 20s. Thank goodness.
Yeah, right.
And I'm sure, you feel the same way. There were good parts of it. And 30s and 40s. I feel even like the 40s, you're raising children, family, and it's just, there's a lot going on. And as I hit 50, I'm like, oh, there's another side to this. This is great. So I want to share that message. Sorry.
Do you think that? No, we'll get into the 50 factor and what you're building. We'll talk about that. It's funny. I thought about coming into this conversation and I thought, okay, I'm going to have a female that fits into this segment of the 50 factor, talking to a male that just fits into the segment of the thing that, if we're saying it, on the opposite side of what we're talking about.
Yes.
And not that it's an opposing argumentative
No.
thing, but what could help is to try to understand each other. And maybe,
Absolutely.
right? And maybe by understanding each other, there's big groups, millions of people that represent the same thing. And it's like, how do we understand the other side?
Mm-hmm.
And if acknowledging, so what I want to dig deep on is, because I come to this as a 47-year-old male running businesses.
You don't look a day over 46.
No.
Right?
Yeah, not 44, not 42. So, but and then you're going to come to it from this perspective of the life and the experience that you've had of a female that fits into that side. And so the question I have, not because we're going to get all the way into the 50 factor.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, and what you're doing. But I wonder, in doing this, because I'm seeing it through my lens, and I actually had a dinner last night. I'm taking maybe our top 75% performers in the company to dinners at really nice restaurants over the next 5 weeks. And it's I call it Pivot 2.0. It's this real estate company I own. That's the day job. This is the medium mid-afternoon night job. But and 8 of them were women, 2 were men. And I wasn't talking to them as men and women.
Right.
They all had similar questions. But a lot of it was around self-confidence. It was around belief or a lack of belief.
Mm-hmm.
It was, do you think the average person could do this? And so in this world where we're trying to have equality in everything, the great conversation I like to say is, what is the difference that we could help and could assist in these different segments that might be unique? That there might be different experiences. So maybe lean in today, because I see this isn't going to be that podcast. This is for another one with a guy in this range. I see a lot of problems, and I'm going to take away from today what we talk about, the 50 factor and middle-aged women and entrepreneurship and business. I'm going to match that up with big deficiencies and big self-confidence issues I'm seeing with guys in the same range too.
Absolutely. And you're correct. And that it does exist. And when I started the 50 factor, the original focus was on women and men. And what I found was that women were asking for their own place, their own voice to share. Yeah. Because sometimes when you see a confident woman, or you're having a round table, and you're lucky because you had 8 women at the table, so that probably helped them feel comfortable and ask questions. But for this piece, women were coming up to me saying, I just, we have different needs. We have different issues that we want to focus on, opportunities and solutions. Sometimes I don't feel like it's I want this to be real, unfiltered. So that, and I understood that as I thought about it. And we have different experiences. And at the same time, we're all looking to move forward. So if we could shed light on our experiences, it isn't to work in opposition, but to work together. And there maybe will be that 50 factor male, or maybe maybe we'll just be working together. Because that's the ultimate goal, really.
The awesome thing I think we should do, because today I'm going to be in this position. Yeah, it's my podcast and all that, but the guest is, I'm coming from this place of let me seek to understand. Let's have this conversation around the things that you've experienced, that you've seen, and lean in on this. And hopefully I walk away, and all the listeners walk away with a greater gratitude or understanding of, hey, because here's what I want all the women in the companies that I'm building, I want them all to crush. I want them all to succeed, because when they succeed, what happens to me? I succeed, right? And so hopefully this will help people like me and other people that look like me. And then also the women, there's probably 60% women that work at the companies I run versus 40% men. And to be able to highlight this, and then half of them fit into this segment. So I'm pumped about the conversation.
Is your company focused on residential real estate, commercial?
It started residential, and now we're doing more commercial, but the whole company's growing in general. But thank you. But the leadership team I have, it's funny to me looking at this, but I want to make this about you and the 50 factor. But I
have a question about that. I think there's more. Well, there is more women in the real estate agency field because it works with their families, their life. They can kind of fit it in. They can take on the work that they want. They can ebb and flow. And that's the kind of sort of industry where that works. And that's awesome. but that doesn't work in a lot of industries.
Yeah. But I train it different.
I'm not saying you don't. I'm not, not at all.
Yeah.
I can just tell you from from the perspective of me, when we're women are talking, like, hey, you know what? Because I do believe all of us ebb and flow out of the workforce. We give birth, we raise children, we take care of households, we have divorces, the whole 9 yards. But when you can have flexibility in a way that, and still feel like you're growing while you're going through these things, it's much better.
Wolf, I hope you give me the safe space today, because I'm going to give you the floor. We'll give an intro here in a second. I want to go deep. I was in the car this morning with our producer, with Dave. We were going and doing something, and we were actually talking. We have two episodes today, and we were talking about this one. And I said, hey, let's just talk with him. I said, let's just talk about the truth of the experience of a highly skilled and capable woman that leaves the workforce, has kids, goes home for 6 to 8 to 10 years, and comes back. And I said, and me and him had a conversation in the car that most people aren't willing to have, just to talk about it. It's like, what's that look like on coming back into the workforce, but also maybe with men and women that didn't leave? And I'm like, where would I come from that debate? Where would that person who didn't leave the workforce, who continued progression, who continued experience, how's that dynamic come back together?
Well, that's the question that's got to be answered.
Yeah.
And we're just starting to answer that. But, our generation, Gen X, we were college educated. It was the first generation where women had more college degrees, advanced degrees, professional degrees than men. 40% women, 37%. So this is in the 90s. And we were qualified and well educated. What happens is the workforce wasn't really made for women. It was made to suit, because it's so inflexible. So what happened was the structure hadn't really changed, but we had great women. And then all of a sudden, when I've interviewed and spoken to other women, there was this sense when we got married or had children or had to step out that we were like kind of shortchanged, because we had all this education. I remember sitting in Mommy and Me groups, and I was like, there were attorneys, accountants, and it's not that they wanted to leave their profession. Their profession at that time still expected billable hours at a certain amount. You can't figure it out. You have to figure out your life and see if this fits in. So I think that's a deficit where women are coming from. I see it in my own life. I've been very blessed having an education and a career that I controlled. And, there were times, I call it ebb and flow. I had children in the workforce while I was working full time as a head of marketing, and then, took a sales role, a consultant role, because lives change. And someone needs to, not only watch out for their own health and well-being, but for someone else's.
What do you think happens? Let me give you an intro. How about that? Let me give an intro, and then I want to pick up right on this, because the question I'll ask, and maybe, because, I'm not interested ever in like gotcha questions. I'm interested in questions and answers that are truly problem solving in their idea. And
yes,
so
I see that in the title, The Necessary Entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's it, right? And so I think, let me give the intro, but I want to pick back up and say, I'd like to go through this path of, if a woman would step out of the workplace, that she's already educated professionally and educated with schooling. Let's just say at 32, she steps out. Be thinking about this. And then 8 years later, she steps back in at 40. What's that reintroduction look like? I know we're trying to build entrepreneurs, and maybe the corporate America is just inflexible and it doesn't allow it. But does that 40-year-old, do they step back in where they left? So, okay. So that's,
unless you have someone who is, out of an extraordinary leader or vision, and sees the potential. So, but not, we have to raise the awareness. And that's what we'll be doing through the 50 factor. I even noticed that when I Well, I'll let you introduce
Yeah,
them.
let me
Then we
introduce you. We'll do this, and then we'll get back into it because I hope that we can go again deep. You understand you have control of this information. Like, let's go deep and have the conversation. And even if I would say something today that you're like, I disagree with it, let's talk about it, right?
agree.
And the same thing.
I don't come from that
Yeah.
way. So it's collaboration. That's why I feel like I'm fitted for this. But
Awesome. Okay, so today's guest is Kim Keating. She's the founder and CEO of the 50 Factor. After more than 20 years in sales and marketing leadership, Kim launched a business built around the idea that it's never too late to reinvent what's next. Today, we're talking about why founders over 50 are thriving, why experience may be one of the most undervalued assets in business, and why the second half of your career might just be the perfect time to build something meaningful. So, Kim, after the long intro, welcome to The Necessary Entrepreneur.
thank you, Mark.
Yes.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be awesome. So we can jump right back in. Then we're going to open up about entrepreneurship and what's happening with middle-aged women and how they can lean in to continue growing and building. But when I said if you leave at 32 and don't have any professional experience and would re-enter at 40, what happens for an educated, experienced female that had been in the workforce until 32? What happens at 40 with a reintroduction?
Right? She's probably struggling, trying to figure out how to navigate back without many resources, because there's a misconception that, we're, what's the word I want to use? There's just a misconception about our strengths, our talents, and our weaknesses. And I don't think really anyone's paying attention to how we're getting back into the workforce.
Okay, let's talk about it. How are we?
How are we?
Yeah.
We're just on the precipice. When people do go back to work, I can only speak from what the research that I know, the women I've spoken to, myself. You can have all the credentials. If there is a gap, there's still this presumption that like, oh, what happened? Why does she have a gap? And I had someone who I was working with as with a consultant saying, why does she have a gap? And this woman, had her law degree from Penn, her undergrad, all this, started companies. She left it to raise children.
Yeah, is that not? So what's funny to me is...
Yeah, I did want to just finish this. So it was someone who understood, and the snap judgment was, because that's what you would do if you saw, let's say, a male LinkedIn and there was 8 years. Why? What happened to him? But there's a whole host of reasons, not only for that man, but even more for us on the other side. And I had to explain, she had children. She took some time off. So you're being judged. My point is you're being judged before you even get in the room.
Here's what's tough about this. This is really what I was talking to our producers beforehand. Here's what's tough about, for me personally, I usually understand ideas around, we could have a conversation. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. But my brain's just not wired like this. And here's why it's not. And it's tough sometimes to think outside. Are people really thinking this way? But what I'm saying is like, we've gone through this 2 or 3 times recently with women coming back into the workforce with us after they raised 2 or 3 kids and went home. For me personally, it didn't even do anything to my brain that they made that decision to stay home and do it. I'm like, kudos, and they're coming back. I'm evaluating the human and the woman that's in front of me right there.
Yes. Now imagine being a lawyer or a doctor or an accountant, right? There's not too much, you don't have to, there's not too much catch up on the real estate end. Yes, you may have to take updated certifications and read. Whole different story, right? If you're someone who came out of the workforce, and it's not like everyone wants to leave their career because there's we identify with our careers. They're part of who we are.
Yep.
So when someone who is educated, professional, and may have stepped out, even for 2 years, there's this sort of, and so what we want to do is to actually work with employers, to develop pathways back. Because there were a lot of good, sharp, quality women who had degrees, practiced law, got to a certain point, let's say, and realized, look, this is too much to juggle. And that could be different from millennials, but this is like our generation where, we didn't really, at some point something had to give. And my husband's amazing, but eventually he was, he worked in New York City. I worked out here. We wanted to be there for our children. If he would have done that, it would have been frowned upon. He couldn't. So, we did. I always kept like a little toe in the water, just whether or not I did a small project or whatever, I always had that. I've started businesses, but it's a little bit challenging when you've been out.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean, so there needs to be pathways to partnership because we have this gaping middle where women from Gen X, some of them may leave the workforce for numerous reasons. And there really isn't a pathway back.
Maybe the awareness is awesome because how my brain, I'm 47 and I'm just looking for talent everywhere. And what I see the other entrepreneurs and business owners I'm around, we're looking for talented leaders. And so maybe there needs to be awareness around this and you working to develop the path. That's what the purpose and what you're on with the 50 factor. Because I'm like, show me 3 women right now. I wouldn't care if it's men or women, but show me 3 women right now that are middle age, that are highly skilled and talented to lead people and to lead systems and lead organizations. Line up right now. I've got a spot for them.
That's great. It's just, look, this is not a one size fits all.
Yeah.
So for you, that's perfect. But I can tell you a lot of women, even me, I was at the head of sales and marketing. I worked for Marsh McLennan agency for 12 years in insurance. Then I was moved over to manufacturing and like doubled the company in size of sales. And they were like, and they'll tell you, they were like, we were flat. And then Kim came in after 20 years and we went like this. I was interviewing. I was interviewing with professional insurance firms. So I know the business. I'm successful in the business. I worked for CEOs. I went through 7 or 8 interviews and did not, the last interview, and I don't want to blame it on anything with gender. It just happened to be an older man. But the last interview, they thought that I might not have been capable to do the job. And so they hired a younger male. And I said, do you realize that you have only 6 men on your team? And they wouldn't answer, you could bring some, not like, hey, there's diversity. But they didn't have the confidence. Yet I'd been in sales for 20 years and exceeded numbers. So I'm not, and that happened 1 or 2 times. And I really thought, I was like, oh no, I've heard people say this. Is this really true? When you're younger, you can walk in. It's a little easier. But if I'm going through this, are other women going through this? And men, too. That's so, no doubt. But men, when you have a different sort of penalty, because they may have never left the workforce.
Yeah. I want to jump into how you're helping build this through entrepreneurs, because the other conversation today and the entrepreneur opportunity for women now, for everyone, I actually have a friend who's in the C-suite space of technology. Really good friend, known him for 25 years. And he works for a manufacturing company.
Yeah,
and me and
maybe
him
I know.
I can't say can't say those things, who it is and all that. But here's the conversation. I said, hey, at what point it's still privately owned, and it's hundreds of millions of dollars, the revenue in this company, still privately owned, and it feels like sometime over the next 3 to 5 years they're going to sell. And we know how that goes. When it sells and things are combined, they don't usually keep 2 people in the same position. What he and I were talking about, I said, hey, man, here's what's going to be tough for you if that happens. And by some chance, you end up not having this role. It's going to be really tough for you to reproduce that same role in an organization you didn't come up through, and to reproduce that same income. And you're going to be in your late 40s. And so that's just a conversation a guy to a guy was having. And I said, what allowed you to grow is you knew the people, you grew in teams, you had this respect. I don't know if looking at you from the outside, if this manufacturing company you're working for now would give you this same job. So I'm just wondering the experience out here. I had that organic conversation, nothing else in my head. And he went, you're right, man. This is going to be tough for me to reproduce, even if I'm out of the job for 6 months. So I think this new world of entrepreneurship.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you have to look at things differently. You may be out of the workforce for some time, but let's say, just to be devil's advocate,
Yeah.
a woman
Yeah.
who's been home raising children, she maybe did part-time work throughout, and now she's ready to return. The employer on the other side, or she's been working and now she's like, you know what, my kids are grown. There's another profession I would love to join, because we're going to, we talk about a multi-career life. Um, the assumptions on the other side, and this has nothing to do with who's on the other side. Let's just pretend it's HR, right? But the assumption
male, female, whoever it may be.
Right. Oh, she's too experienced. She makes too much money. She's getting near retirement. How long is she going to stay? But those questions are really, they're changing. They're not as relevant today. So we have to teach that behind the other side, because women, let's say I want to change a career. Maybe I have worked, right? I have a nest egg, and I decide my kids have left, or maybe my husband's left me, or whatever. You want to go back to the workforce. So there's all these snap judgments. That's what human nature. That's how we process, right?
Yeah, I hate it. Here's
So
what
we
I
have
love.
to teach, educate, awareness, and educate. So you say, oh, so you're thinking of getting into a new profession. How do you feel about this particular role? People are moving laterally, starting with lower salaries, because we're going to live hopefully to 100. So we've got some, it's a different, not like we're going to quit, or there's an investment that can be made.
This is what we just talked about, is why I love entrepreneurship. Because I talk on a daily basis around people, whether I'm trying to convince them to get into real estate, because it's entrepreneur light. They're not responsible for hiring all the folks, doing HR, but I love it because no one can take it away except for the marketplace.
That's right.
I absolutely love it. And so that middle-aged women, that this could be their reentry. Entrepreneurship, looking at the marketplace, what value could I serve? Not just that, is a tremendous opportunity, because there's nothing limiting me or you or anyone else in the marketplace if we do our thing. So what's the idea about re-entering a workplace, changing careers, and it being an entrepreneurial venture?
Well, I'm one, so I believe in it. And there are definitely, there's some great research out there about midlife female founders and building their businesses more quickly than younger founders.
They kick men's ass.
No, this doesn't even have to do with men, but it just says millennials, and they're quicker because they have experience, right? Wisdom. They saw a structural problem. Like, that's really what I'm seeing, right? I'm seeing a structural problem, which is funny. And they have an opportunity, they have time, wisdom, money to invest in themselves. They don't necessarily need to go, and they're not going to get money half the time anyway, but a VC route. So, they're not burning through cash. So there's a better likelihood of succeeding over time and stabilization.
How valuable do you think that experience is in life, years, education, just the human experience? How valuable is that compared to the way people were valuing traditional education? Because they're separate. They're completely separate.
Yeah. That's hard. I don't know enough about that to talk comfortably about that. I know that was our first generation. We were the generation where we're like, for women, we're going to have it all. We're going to work, right? We're going to get married and have kids. We're going to do it all. And then you kind of get in, and you're maybe a little midway through your career, or you leave it less. And then you realize, hey, wait, nothing else has changed. I still, I only get, if I'm lucky, 12 weeks of maternity leave. Because if I have a C-section which is a disability, I get 12 weeks. So we were like, wait, it wasn't that we didn't want to go back. And some of us have gone back and wanted to just be sort of normalized, where you can enter and you can leave. You can enter and you can leave, both men and women. So I think that there is change that's coming, but what's being missed is the opportunity right here. Because we are educated, because we're talented, because we have experience, because we have confidence that we may not have had in our 20s, and we're going to live a long time. So, we're in a great position, and there's this gaping middle where midlife women could really fill it.
Yeah. I mean, there's a huge, I even called it willing. There's a huge gap in a willingness, or something's happening that I'm seeing. And I'm talking to a lot of people, not just in entrepreneurship, but in the public sector, private sector, everywhere. There is a significant void of really good leaders that's happening right now, that normally people in their 40s and 50s are filling and coming up with experience. And there's a huge gap for some reason. Something has happened.
Yeah. Baby boomers are not retiring. One of the reasons is that they are healthier, right? We're not going to, most people say like, okay, you retire when you're 65. But if you're still healthy and able-bodied and like what you do, you're not going to leave your position. So that's hurting, I think, the millennials. And for the last 20 years or so, 23 years, we haven't moved the needle in leadership positions at the top, like say Fortune 500. There are only, there's, as of today, 3 African-American women who are 500. There's a scant amount. It varies from 11 to 13 for all midlife women who are in Fortune 500. And some of that is because of that issue, is that the people at the top are either, not retiring or not bringing us with them.
Yeah, I was referring to almost and not bringing, I was speaking to a female, a very highly skilled, high positioned female in the public sector. And we were talking about them promoting people into leadership positions. And these happen to be positions that they were looking at. It's a field that a lot of women are in leadership positions versus men. And they told me the person that was being promoted into this position and the things that I had heard over the years about the struggles that female had had. I went, hold on. You're talking about the same person that you're putting into this significant leadership role that has had all these struggles, that hasn't developed. I said, aren't there other people, other women, anybody that is prepared, because this person isn't prepared? And they went, that's the best we got. And they even knew there were significant deficiencies. So I'm like, there is a void. There's something going on.
Yeah, they're not looking hard enough. And I worked for a women-owned manufacturing company started by her husband. They're co-founders. It is where women, there's less representation. But one of the things is I'm kind of like I am a see something, say something person. And within this specific, there's a manufacturer's day held every year where they have conferences around the state of the industry, workforce, recruiting, all of that. And every year they have the panel, and the panel had 12 white men on it to talk about hiring women and people of color. And this wasn't like the first time. This was like 3 or 4 times. And what was bothering me so much about it is like, there are women there. And it's nothing changes if you keep having the same conversation. So I said to my CEO, I said, I have to say something. This goes on every year. And so she was like, yeah, sure. And my point is, when I got to the stage, I said, hey guys, we're talking about this year after year after year. Why not have some women on the panel who can actually engage you and help you come up with a pathway to women in manufacturing? Because it gets stuck. You say it on the stage, and then that's it. And I told them, look, because I have heard this, if you can't find anyone who's a CEO, find a great vice president, find a rising star, find people other than the traditional route that's up there. And if you don't, because we were always the ones called upon because we were women, but I don't want to be, my CEO didn't want to be the only woman called upon. Neither did I. So I was like, but I did say, call us and we'll help you fill your panels if you can't find them. Because that's what usually was what I heard. And let me tell you, the next year they had made sure they integrated women on different panels and people of color, before, because if you're talking diversity of perspective, then you really have to have diversity of perspective. And they changed. And that's, wasn't about me being on the stage or anything like that. It was making a change. And this was kind of when I got the idea for the 50 factor, because when I walked up, what I didn't expect was the people in the room saying, thank you for saying what I was afraid to say.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I think should happen these days, to have respectful conversations over the things that most people, but that's a part of the confidence piece we're talking about as well. I think back on this side, I always hear people give Warren Buffett all this credit for being one of the best investors of all time. So, but he's highly accomplished, highly skilled. But he actually said what helped him the most turn into the human that he is, it wasn't his degrees from Wharton or any of the other degrees. It was being in Toastmasters. It was going to the classes that helped him develop the ability and willingness to speak. And so do you think that's a part of what you're doing with 50 Fact?
As an entrepreneur or
a middle-aged woman, just to say, hey, listen, if this helped someone, a man that we look at as being elite, even become more elite than other men, there's more happening here than just the traditional things we talked about education, about experience. It's about turning yourself into this human that will succeed and elevate in the roles.
So the 50 Factor is designed to host workshops, networking experiences, panel discussion, communication, all of those ways so that you can excel at whatever it is you want to do, whether you want to return to your previous career, you want to go to another one, second act, whatever it is, but that you have the skills to get there and the confidence to get there.
Yeah.
And a lot of women are starting their own businesses. And I don't mean like a one-off consultant business, right? They're making things, they're manufacturing, they're creating professional service firms. So, and they're doing it their way. Not that because if you're having difficulty, the original route, you got to just go around it.
Yeah. What's something that people in their 40s and 50s, what's something they don't realize? Because a lack of confidence is just it's not a realization. It's not the proper belief. It's not the understanding that you probably already have all the tools you need. They're probably there. You just got to wake them up. What do you think that's something that these females that you're going to help in their 40s and 50s, middle age, what's something that they don't realize that actually has tremendous value? Is there something that they're not aware of that has?
Yeah, I don't want to say that I'm going to help, because there's we did our launch party and was celebrating midlife women, and women from all walks of life came out to celebrate. We expected a small group. It doubled. And, they came out to support each other, but they're, very accomplished women too, who want to share and learn from others. So it's not this sense of help, but it's more of this sense of ignition. Right? We're igniting something that's not really in the marketplace right now. And confidence, there are definitely, we host empowerment coaching. So that's part of it. The pledge, it's telling my story. I was not always confident. I didn't always, I've gone through hard times at times, but that in midlife, I guess the can'ts, don't let the can'ts preclude you from doing whatever it is you want to do. Because they're just can'ts, and if we can help them get there, whether that's by lifting, their self-esteem or finding it, some things are just, like you said, hidden, got to dust them off. But if we can hide them and say, it's okay to feel the way you feel, we're all going to get through this together. It's a better way. And if we could share stories that are, personal accounts of women doing things, even, feeling the same way. Like I said, if you would have seen me, if I would have been this person today, my younger self would have said, what the heck is wrong with you? We don't like stages. We don't, we don't like speaking. We don't like video. I was like a little very reserved wallflower. So, you take the cans away and there's something else there.
Yeah. At dinner last night, I was sitting next to, a female that I've worked with for a long time that's really successful. And I went around the room and I asked everyone an individual question. I pulled out a card with their name and I asked them a question that was really specific about, what we've done together, what we've built, what they still want to do, reflection, growth. And she led into something came out. She's like, well, I'm not doing great. And I let her get to the end. I went, hold on. We need to make sure we provide the proper context, because when you started working at this company 10 years ago, your life has exponentially increased in value, benefit, the lifestyle, what your family's doing, right? It's just, I said, so what are you saying great because you think the world's expecting something different out of you? Because in 10 years ago, if I would have laid down and said, put your head down for 10 years, work, be a great mom to your 2 kids, you have the family that you want. And let me tell you, in 10 years, the house you're going to live in, the vacations you take, the investments you've built, the accounts that you've built for your kids, the lifestyle you get to live, the freedom, would you have exchanged it right now and said, I'll take it? And she said, absolutely. I said, then how is it coming out of your mouth that you're not doing great?
Right. We have, how we redefine things.
Yep.
The names, the words are so significant.
I said to her and everyone else, I looked around the table and I said, it's really important how we talk to ourselves, you all. It's really important because it matters. Because I don't think anything in your brain about where you're at right now should say that you haven't done great. It's okay to say, I still want more. I still want to grow, but acknowledge it for what it is. And so I just think just that redirection of even that 2 or 3 minute conversation, not just for her.
Changing the way that we see it. I mean, to me,
absolutely.
Like midlife, I didn't look at that as like, hey, we're being wronged. I look at that as, hey, we have so much opportunity. This is not a midlife crisis for men, women. This is a midlife opportunity. Changes everything.
Well, we've already solved all the problems.
I guess so.
What makes you so passionate about this? Usually we build these things from our personal experience, but what makes you so passionate? And I'm not just saying passionate, but excited about what you're building, about the 50 factor.
It's real change. It's, I have a sense of purpose. I can see that I'm meant for this role. Like that I had never felt like that before. And I see that it's not only going to benefit, women, it's going to benefit our economy, having more money in it, society, culturally, our children. So, this is a generation that had so much to offer and still have. And some of us are way in leadership, and maybe you have an opportunity to bring the next, level up with you, but we can't just kind of die on the vine. And some women feel that way. No reason to.
Yeah. Every time I hear something like that, I go to an origin. It's not a why, just a whole other problem. But I'm like, why do they feel that way? Because it's like that conversation last night. I didn't want to go deep into like, why do you feel this way? But I think I hit on it really quick. It's like, quit perceiving what the rest of the world is judging. What they're judging you through and with is irrelevant to what the success you want to have is. Right. It is irrelevant, right? And so, yeah. Has social media, the advent of it, has it been positive or negative for women?
Midlife women?
I guess, yeah. Yeah, the people that you're working with now. So let's just say 45 to 60. Is social media, has it been positive for them or not? Because there's all these studies about young girls, how it can negatively impact them. But
well, look, we all see people like friends maybe we haven't spoken to in a long time, or colleagues, and every picture looks beautiful, right? But we don't know what's really going on. I think for me, I just limit time. I don't really go on Facebook. I do use LinkedIn a lot, because there's the other point about the 50 factor is not only are we capable, we have finances, we have investments, we're inheriting a ton amount of money, and we're being ignored right now in a way that because with it not being focusing on women, midlife women have different needs. They're retiring, starting new businesses, maybe going back to school, all of these different things. And the 50 factor is that conduit that can link these women with other companies who can provide guidance, financing. So, in my head, it's like we're also marketing. We know how to market and engage midlife women by creating that trust engagement. So we're working with, on the other side, business to business leaders and companies to reach our audience, not through just like a sponsorship, but through really a real true engagement. And that's, working out. And I think the employers who can realize that, the leaders, marketers, they'll see their revenue grow
exponentially.
Yes.
What's a midlife woman right now? What do you see professionally, yourself and then others that you're leading and what you're building with 50 Factor? What do you see the goals are for the next 20 years? Like if they really sat down, like what do they want to, what do you want to do?
We don't want to be lumped, we don't want to be extrapolated from the group. We want to be included. That's really what it is. So, so that we're not having to figure this all out on our own, but we're all growing together at different points and different stages. And, I'm 54 and I have mentors that are now in their 70s who are on my board because I remember what I learned from them, at 50, and they're still even if they've retired, let's say, they still have on a sense of purpose, maybe not 5 days a week, but they have so much they want to give. And those are role models to our generation. Right? When I go out and I see women older than me and at events and seminars, they're there. So, they've had hardships too, but they're continuing. We want to share that, visualize that, create events, conferences, panels where there's more visibility. So both women and men can see okay, women are really capable no matter what age they are at doing this.
Here's what I hope, and I don't use the word hope much. I don't. A lot of people do, but I refuse to have a relationship with it because I can't do much with hope. That seems like that's the outside world. I hope they're going to do this. So I do.
It's like look. Yes, it comes from almost like a weakened position. I'll take it if it fails.
Yeah, but here's what I hope. I hope that I know how I feel inside about the folks I lead and the companies I build. I hope that the rest of the economy, and especially the United States, where we're talking about, that's the things we can impact right now. Yes, the world's getting smaller, but culturally, what we understand in the U.S. Mm-hmm. I hope that the world is naturally more like me on how I understand it, just looking at talent and not seeing any distinction from a 52-year-old woman or a 27-year-old man, from just trying to say, what are the benefits? What's the value of the human being? How can this person help me in the businesses? How can I help them build? I hope, because inside of me, the frustrating thing to me when I go out in the world, and I like having these conversations, is my brain just doesn't operate with these distinctions. It doesn't. It literally takes the person currently who they are and saying, can you come in and help these organizations I'm building? Can I help build you? Can we do this together? And
so let's create a program.
Yeah.
So you can teach other organizations.
Yeah, because I sit down and have conversations. It seems like to me there's way more of that under the surface. And the ones that get highlighted that don't do that are just the bad actors. And yes. I think, right? And so often the bad actors, I think there's a smaller percentage of them than we give credit to. They're just the loudest. They're the ones that we see. Maybe there's more of them, and I have my head in the sand. But anybody who wants to be in the workforce and wants to use their talents and skills and wants to grow and is all in, not all in 70 hours a week, but all in on making a difference, on making an impact. Are you kidding me? This economy, our country, we need them.
We're definitely not there. So I understand is great because you understand your perspective, then that's important. But there's a gaping middle where midlife women are not in management or in leadership positions for whatever reason. So we're not there yet, but we will be.
That's your purpose. So what else, as we dive a little bit, we've talked 5% 50 factor and 95% philosophy and ideas, but just go a little bit deeper into the 50 factor on really what you're doing. You said you're going to host conferences and you'll have groups, and
so it's a membership, it's a member networking community designed for midlife women to help them, grow, inspire, lead, educate through a midlife lens. So that looks different. Whether or not you stepped out of the workforce, but it just looks different. We want different things. We may want to start businesses, but it's where you can come, we can share, and then create. So there's this sort of, we've been hosting launch parties, but it's virtual as well as in-person programs. We have a program that's coming up called The Pledge, and that's really the start and the heart of your midlife journey. And it's connecting with who you are and in midlife, right? What's important to you? What's your purpose today? It may have changed. More, you may have remembered something from your 20s, or you have something else that's important to you. But we kind of want to give you the permission to reevaluate and take time. And that is through workshops with other women and empowerment coaching, so that you leave and you have some confidence to continue.
I'm on board for it.
Thank you.
100%. I mean,
you want to sponsor a conference?
Listen to this, huh? Somebody's always wanting some money. Hey, can you all give me some more donations and share some more?
Be your voice. No, I don't need donations. By the way, this is a privately held, scalable company, which I like to preface, because sometimes there are like, oh, that's a nice community. No, this is scalable business.
Yeah, scalable, that you truly see profit from and growth, and it'll be exciting. Some things catch fire, and you can't really point to the moment or the thing. If something like this catches fire, I'm all about highlighting it, promoting it, and saying, go and build something. I just see an opportunity that we have in this country with how close communication is now. We hadn't met before today, and we're talking via technology, how close we all are and the impacts that we can make to move society forward, to move our economy forward. Right? And we need it. We need people who are skilled, talented, who are willing to put forth the effort like you are to move this forward. And I'll be the champion.
Look, incremental change is good.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. So what's the big message? Do you think, let's say you have a group of 50 women from 45 to 60 that come into a room. Are there many even different shared perspectives and experiences among them? Or do you think there's something more shared with that group, with the generation? Is it easy to build something for the group that fits? Or is it hard because there's a wide array of experiences, of perspectives, of understandings? Because the more that is, it would be hard.
It's a vast opportunity to do something, like you said, sort of like macro, to connect. Because what's missing is and the opportunity is, we're not focusing on midlife women. And midlife women, they have different needs and experiences. But it's just part of life, just like midlife men. They have different, right? Maybe you now have no children to take care of, financially, and you want to start a business, right? And you need help, but it's hard, because maybe it's a flip side. But what I found is the women, we host our first programs, which also include midlife leaders who are women, who talk about their experiences and journeys. They're very thankful. They're like, thank you for, recognizing this need and giving us the forum and opportunity to connect. Because what I look at is something not only powerful, but magical in the room when women get together because of the way we relate and midlife women. So, organically, things will happen.
So good. I could sit here and talk about this for another hour, but the last thing midlife women want to sit around and listen to is a midlife man.
No, my husband, no.
I'm messing with you. I was like, we're going to go. I'm joking.
No, my husband is, look, when this didn't happen overnight, I knew something was like I told you, my life experiences, there were little connections. I knew I was supposed to be doing something else. I was getting an idea around leadership and maybe, diversity of midlife women, even in business, but I didn't know what it was. And I was getting a little closer. I started to try the things like speaking I spoke about, or putting myself in a room that I wouldn't have felt comfortable, like going to STEM events, right? Because I was always intimidated by it, and being at networking to just try to different things. But what happened was there was a lot of noise in my head. And I said to my husband one day, well, not one day, but December of last year, I said, I know I'm supposed to be doing something else, and I need to leave my job. I said, I need to take a few months to figure this out. And he believed in me. So, he's a wonderful guy. And he said, okay. And it was scary because I'd never had, I've always had finagled or earned or, paycheck throughout my life. So, but when I took that moment to stop and think, that was the greatest gift that was given to me, because the 50 factor had that, I started reading about second acts, living to 100. And I felt like there wasn't a lot of research on our group and how, men or women, like, how do you get back? And I saw that it's such an opportunity. And the 50 factor was born. The name is to, encourage, inspire. You got chutzpah, you got spunk. So I'm thankful to him. We all need partners, whomever they are.
I think it would be a very boring world if everyone were the same.
Of course.
Yeah. So Kim Keating, this is special. I like when I'm around people personally that have an energy about what they're doing. And, right.
Thank you. I grew into this. So, I want to also give other people hope that this isn't just where you have to be. This is a progression of, over the last 30 some odd years. And I probably wouldn't have gotten here unless I looked back and connected the dots.
Feels like you're ready. It wouldn't have mattered what the thing we were talking about today, but coming with the energy and the belief. And, passion's overused, right? I might go put pottery on a wheel and do that. It might be passion, but it feels like you have purpose around this. And you combine energy and purpose and intelligent experience. There's a lot of big things you can do. So I
appreciate that.
Yeah, I hope you go.
And I would love to learn more about your model in real estate. I truly, in hiring, and get to understand that. And I hope today you have a better understanding, and the audience does, of, this is valid and truth, and together we can make change.
Absolutely. So not enough about me. That's for another time about me and my model.
I'm going to call you after this.
Yeah. I'm happy to share all that stuff. And but the 50 factor, tell us the one place that folks, it won't just be at the end, because people might be like, I'm done listening to him, I want to know more about Kim. So we'll highlight this, but what's the one place they could come and engage and find out and learn more?
They can learn more and engage at on LinkedIn with me, actually. So my handle is, it's Kim Keating, and please reach out, share your story. I would love to answer my messages. So, you can also, find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. And on our website, you can join our community right now. That community is free and offers access to webinars, podcasts, interviews with women who are doing different things and what we're all learning together. So my website is 50-factor.com.
What do you know? 50 Factor. So you all follow her, check her out. Give me some reports back on how impactful it is. I'll be excited to see if this energy and this purpose, if it's going to match up.
Yeah, I can tell you this. We're having financial service firms who are signing on, who recognize the investment and the inheritance that we are having, and see, this is an opportunity to grow.
Kim Keating, 50 Factor. Sharing opportunities to grow. You all go check her out. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed this.
This was great. I'm seeking to understand more.
That's conversation. Yeah. Hey, Rome wasn't built in a day, right?
We're trying stone by stone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.